Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I won't be joined by my co-host right now, but Hall should be here in about 15, 20 minutes once his wife gets home. But the title of tonight's episode is Meeting Time. And speaking of, we have a very special guest, the first time on, Justin Melo from the Draft Network. Thank you so much for joining me on this Wednesday afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Appreciate you guys for having me on.
Absolutely, sir. I wanted to get your first thing just to give us some insight into some of these guys that have been meeting with the Commanders. Like, for example, they met with Xavier Restrepo. I was able to watch Jake Majors today. Came away really impressed versus Michigan, but also meeting with the kicker from Florida State, I believe. So if you can, give us some insight into those guys, and also Ashton Gialetti, the defensive end from Louisville that I really, really like. What have you been hearing?
Yeah, Restrepo, I reported that one on, I believe it was, Wednesday afternoon. The Commanders had a private workout with him earlier this week. I thought that was certainly interesting. I think he fits the mold of the type of receiver they should be looking for opposite Scary Terry, right? A guy that kind of wins underneath the coverage, can play that slot-only role. They've had guys like that in the past, a Jamison Crowder type of guy that can just
Yep.
kind of win with quickness and separation. So I think that'd be a great fit, for Jaden Daniels underneath the coverage. The Louisville DN you just brought up, I think that this three-down guy, converts speed to power at a high level, sets the edge on early downs. Getting a bit lost here in this deep class of DNs, but
Yeah.
I think he's a good one. In
Abs-
regards to Jake Majors, I believe I reported it was a Zoom meeting with the Commanders that they had recently with Jake. A center-only prospect might lack that versatility that teams like across the interior that can play guard as well.
hmm.
Doesn't have terrific arm length, but he's kind of been an overachiever. A multi-year starter there. Was a big piece for them this past year. Early on in this process, people were talking about him like he might have been the best center in the draft. I don't think that's no longer the case. That's not quite the consensus opinion anymore. But
Okay.
he's a high football IQ guy, high floor. Best thing you could say about Jake Majors, in my opinion, he's going to play in the NFL for like 10, 12 years. Just one of those guys that teams are going to really appreciate for, specifically for the high football IQ. He can command an offensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back and watch Texas offense, they were able to run the football, and a lot of that has to do through that center position. And they asked him to do a lot of the pulls to the outside, and obviously athletic enough to be able to do that. But my next question for you, in regards to 29, let's just say Washington is picking at 29. What are some players that should be there, based on your opinion, and players that in positions that Washington should be targeting?
It's either going to come down to a wide receiver or an edge rusher,
Okay.
right? And the interesting thing about that 29 spot, it's easy to foresee a ton of them being available, right? Like at receiver, I think it's more likely to be like Emeka Egbuka or Luther Burden. If one of those guys is there, again, going back to what I said about Restrepo, I think they fit the Commanders' offense so well in the sense that they complement what Scary Terry does, right? Those are guys that win underneath the coverage. They're dynamic in short spaces. They're great after the catch. That's the type of skill set I think Washington should be looking for at receiver. And I'd be shocked if at least not one of them, was available at 29. I think there's a good chance that one, if not both. And then at edge rusher, God, there's just a bucket of so many of them that could be there, right? At 20, I mean, Landon Jackson from Arkansas is a guy that's, I think, a dynamic athlete, but can also play all three downs. Femi Oladejo is a guy they've shown some interest in out of UCLA. That might be a stunner there at 29, but I totally wouldn't rule that out. You talked about the Texas A&M kid earlier. I could see him being there at 29, not quite the top 10, top 15 pass rusher he was once believed to be. There's the Boston College kid that had 16 and a half sacks this past year. I think he deserves more buzz. There's Princely out of Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I don't get why he's not getting more first-round buzz. I think he deserves it. I mean, I can go on and on. Mike Green out of Marshall, James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. Those guys, people are still figuring out where they're going to go. There's been some off-field question marks surrounding them. If one of them is still there at 29, and I think there's a good chance both of them will be, I could see Coach Dan Quinn pounding the table for one of these edge rushers, right, for his defense. But I think it comes down to edge or receiver, and they should have multiple options at both.
Yeah, absolutely. Donovan Ezuriku is somebody that early on in the process I watched from Boston College, and he obviously is very ferocious, plays with his hair on fire. But what do you think about the safety group? If you had to list the top three safeties in this draft, and we're not going to include Jahdae Barron because he played outside corner, we can keep him there for the draft process. But just in particular, specifically safeties, what would you say are your top three safeties?
There's a very clear top two, and there's quite a bit of separation between them, right? There's Malachi Starks out of out of Georgia, and Nick Amaniori. I got ahead of myself there, out of South Carolina. Both those guys are going to go in the first round, in my opinion. By all accounts, everyone I've checked in with says the same thing. And after that, you got a clear gap. It really becomes more of what's your flavor,
Okay.
what's your type. For my money, I think Billy Bowman Jr. out of Oklahoma is the third best safety. It's just outstanding ball production, multi-year starter, great experience coming out of Oklahoma there. But there are some other guys, Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame is someone that people like a lot. And then you can get into the later rounds, a Hunter Waller out of Wisconsin. You got a Jonas Sanker out of Virginia. There are some intriguing safeties, but to me, there's a lot of separation between Malachi Starks, Nick Amaniori, and then the next group.
I absolutely love it. Don't forget about my boy Andrew Makuba out of Texas. I love the
Yeah,
way that he
yeah.
plays football. And Xavier
I
Watts, when we watched him, dude, he was a thumper, man. He could hit.
He's a thumper. I'm glad you brought up Makuba because I just had a great conversation with him. It hasn't published yet. That's going on the Draft Network, I believe, this Tuesday, so
Okay.
early next week. Talking about a guy, really intriguing journey, and I enjoyed this part of the conversation with him specifically. So at Clemson, he's playing in the box. He's playing nickel. Almost no ball production there, right?
Mm.
He goes to Texas. He had what, five, six, seven interceptions this past year. They asked him to play the deep safety role. All of a sudden, he's a roaming ball hawk. He's had the best of both worlds. Two different coaching staffs at two blue blood programs asked him to do two completely different things. You ask him which one he enjoyed more. He's got a tough time. Certainly, he loved the ball production that he had this past year, but thought he was a real good man eraser in the nickel when Clemson used him in that role.
Absolutely, and it also brings to mind with Nick Scorton from Texas A&M, where at Purdue, right, he was able to get 10 sacks, was down, I think, 250, 260, transfers to Texas A&M. They asked him to predominantly focus on the run game and get up to 285 pounds. Obviously, you see it, but his athleticism is very good. What do you think about Nick at the next level?
I think it's a Dan Quinn type of player, don't
Okay.
you? That's why I wouldn't rule him out there at 29. Three down guy, stop the run, certainly, as you said, he did this past season, bulked up. That's a three down defensive end at that weight. And you don't got to take him off the field in pass rushing packages. He can absolutely get after the passer. As you said, a double digit sack guy at Purdue. I think he's going to be that type of player at the next level. Now, I don't see elite pass rushing potential in his future, but I do think he's a steady 7 to 10 sack guy every year that also stops the run. Those guys are really good and they're really important. And Dan Quinn's made a career out of having those types at DN. Those guys get paid a lot of money too. Look at what Harold Landry was doing for the Tennessee Titans for a long time.
Right.
Always a 7 to 10 sack guy, right? But he got paid $85 million because he dropped in coverage, he stopped the run on all three downs. So those players are incredibly important. I can certainly see Nick Scorton being that type of guy.
Absolutely, and that brings it to mind the past Josiah Stewart from Michigan, who obviously was asked to drop back a heck of a whole lot, but shows some very good pass rush and bull rush speed to power kind of stuff. But my next question for you: what are your thoughts on Darian Porter, the cornerback from Iowa State? The one question, he's 6'4", 200 pounds. He fits the mold. Former wide receiver that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt love out of a cornerback. But the one thing with only 400 and over 450 snaps, I'm screaming, why isn't he getting more snaps? Do you have any insight into that? And what do you think about him?
I just think he was a little raw, right?
Okay.
It took a little bit of time for the light bulb to come on, but when you just mentioned the size, when you pair that size with the speed that he put at the NFL Combine, he ran a blazing fast 40. I can guarantee you that teams are incredibly intrigued by him. Reminds me a little of Rick Woolen coming out a couple years ago at UTSA, right? Where he didn't have a whole lot of experience under his belt, but he had the size, he had the athleticism. Teams were a little bit afraid about the lack of experience in production. He slips all the way to the fifth round. I thought that was a catastrophic mistake at the time. I didn't get that one at all. He was going in first round of some mocks. He goes in the fifth. I mean, as soon as he hit the third, I couldn't believe teams just kept passing and passing. And you don't want to see the same thing happen to Darian Porter, because if it does, just like Rick Woolen, I think he'll make 31 other teams pay.
Absolutely. And Tyreek Woolen, I know the Seattle fans really love him. One of my coworkers is one. But to wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you. I know you got to get out of here. But who would you say is the latest risers as of late?
Boy, that's a tough question. There are a
Try to
couple.
dial it down.
Yeah, there are a couple guys that I do think have a chance to go surprise and go in the first round. I mentioned Femi Oladejo out of UCLA. I think it's a guy that can get there. One that I'm super high on is Jalen Royals, the receiver out of Utah State. For
Okay.
me, he's just checked boxes this entire process. Outstanding athlete, wins after the catch, super physical at the line of scrimmage. I think Jalen Noel has a chance to sneak into the back end of the first round. I mean, the combine performance was just stupid. The production at Iowa State this year was outstanding, and
Absolutely.
so was the performance at the Senior Bowl. So he's checked a ton of boxes as well. So there, those three sort of come to mind. I don't think they count now, but Matthew Golden, Jahdae Barron, and Jahad Campbell are three players that teams did not have in the first round. I think a month and a half ago, but it seems like foregone conclusions that all of them will be in the opening 32.
Absolutely love it. Second to last question for you. Teams do you think that would be willing to trade up back into the first round, if you had to guess?
The New England Patriots, at number 4 overall, I think if they don't get a tackle there, and I know they're going to consider Will Campbell there, but if for some reason, Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is there, I think that's the route that they would go
Okay.
at number 4. I also wouldn't rule out them doing something, crazy like an Ashton Ginty or Jalen Walker at
Okay.
4th overall. That could end up being one of the surprises of the draft. But I guess to say, whichever position they don't get at 4 between offensive tackle and wide receiver, that's probably their two biggest needs. I can see them coming back up to like that 25 to 32 range to get one of the falling players. And as I said, there are going to be ones. At tackle, they could come up for a Josh Connerly Jr. or an Ariante Ursary. Or at receiver, they could come up for an Igbuka, a Ted McMillan, a Matthew Golden, a Luther Burden. So the Patriots really, really come to mind for me when talking about a team that could trade back into the first round after making their original selection.
And I do wonder if the Ravens would be any interested in doing that. They have so many picks in the middle rounds. They obviously have the ammunition to do it. But my last question for you, you being Titans focused, but do you think it's going to be Cam Ward?
Yeah, I do. I think the Titans have been preparing all offseason long for it to be Cam Ward at number 1 overall. I mean, their lack of activity in the quarterback market in free agency was incredibly telling. They didn't pursue Sam Darnold. They didn't pursue Russell Wilson. They didn't speak about Aaron Rodgers. What did they do? They went out and got Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. I mean, those are veteran backup mentor types. And I think that's also preparing to move on from Will Levis, right? Because Will Levis is not going to have interest in backing up a number 1 overall rookie quarterback. So what did they do? They went out and got veteran guys that are comfortable playing that role. And by the way, Brandon Allen used to work with, Brian Callahan, the head coach in
Okay.
Cincinnati. That's the ideal backup QB to help a rookie learn the offense, right? Someone that's
Totally
already
agree.
familiar with it. So, and you look at what they did on the offensive line, spending money on Dan Moore Jr., spent some money on Kevin Zeitler to play right guard. I think all signs have pointed to Cam Ward at number 1. I mean, they sent the gauntlet to the pro day. They sent the general manager, the president of football ops, the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the quarterbacks coach, the assistant GM, and the president, senior vice president. So I've never seen anything like that. And then the owner sent a private jet to a private workout a week later to go meet him. So all signs point to Cam Ward. It's going to be Cam Ward at number 1.
Hey, that Louisville game still blows my mind watching that game. Of some of the plays that he made were incredible. I interviewed Elijah Alston, who plays for Miami at defensive end, and he talked about, he's like, whatever you see in the games, he does that in practice tenfold, and we even accelerate the pressure in practice and still able to do stuff like that. So it wasn't really surprising to him. But if you guys are going to be able to get Cam Ward, dude, that's going to be great for Titans country. But Justin, before you get out of here, would you like to plug your social media handle and your show, just in case anybody watching hasn't followed you yet, sir, and would like to?
Yeah, find me on Twitter at Justin M _NFL. currently overseeing our prospect interview series for the Draft Network. I've published interviews with more than 150 prospects in this class. It's been a busy but a very exciting time. Head over to thedraftnetwork.com, read all those interviews. We got mock drafts dropping every Sunday, scouting reports on over 300 prospects in this class. Our director of scouting won a championship at LSU. We've got a pretty legit scouting department over there at the Draft Network. So make sure you head over there and consume all the draft content your heart desires.
Everyone in this community of Washington is biting at the bit, man. They cannot wait for the draft. Justin, I can't thank you enough for joining me, brother. This was a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll be able to get you on in the future, possibly after the draft, to get your kind of insight on some new, because Lord knows they're going to select people I haven't looked at yet. So I would love to be able to hear your thoughts on it, brother.
Yeah, pleasure's all mine. You know where to find me.
Absolutely. Justin, have a good day, sir.
Likewise.
All right, everybody. We just spoke with Justin from the Draft Network. Always appreciate the guys at the Draft Network. Trevor Sikkema is formerly of the Draft Network, now at PFF. Obviously, my boy Ryan Fowler, of course, is there. Their reputation precedes them. They are really about it, with that sort of term. But wanted to answer some fan questions to kind of wrap up this episode. And I got some other guests coming here join me. Good friend Corey Sanchez, and hopefully Hall will be able to get here very, very soon. But this question was submitted by the Colonel. Aside from edge rusher, what is our biggest defensive weakness yet to be addressed? Wow, that's a great question. Because it's not really a defensive weakness per se, right? Like we were top 5 in passing yards allowed on defense, right? And there's going to be some pundits, some trolls out there that say, well, it's because your running defense is so bad that teams didn't have to pass on you. I call bullcrap on that. If a team wants to hit you over the top to be able to get easy points, they're going to do it. We've seen it before. We've seen this team have a bad run defense and a bad pass defense. Speaking of the year before, and that happened. So it's hard to really say. I would say the weakness is much more so in the way that I think is in the depth, right? Because I've said this so many times on here, but like the way you build a roster is by going in saying that your starters at each of these positions is going to be knocked out. It's going to be missing time for a crazy amount of time. Not a crazy amount of time, but just a random amount of time. And you have to be able to game plan, have a backup plan in case that were to happen. And one of those positions I would say is middle linebacker, because Bobby Wagner being a coach on the field is incredibly important, because the defense is right now, you could say the defense is built around Bobby Wagner. And so it does create somewhat of an issue if Bobby were to miss time. As much as Bobby would be able to help Jordan McGee get up and ready to play, could Jordan McGee be able to do that and be able to get guys in position and be able to be that coach on the field? And I find that to be possibly a weakness if Bobby were to miss time, and knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't ever happen. But I would say depth at linebacker is probably one. And I think depth at strong safety, actually maybe just safety in general, because I think Jeremy Reeves could easily come in and slide in at strong safety and help you out at times. Quan Martin is actually really good as a free safety. He does a very good job of being that rover, be able to move from sideline to sideline, be able to help out your defense a little bit. And also, he's also opportunistic of being able to catch the football. But if you were to lose Quan Martin, do you have somebody back there that you could say could be that deep middle of field safety you would feel comfortable with? Even at times last year with Jeremy Chin, there were times where he got caught a little bit. It was few and far between, but I would say that's a position on defense that you definitely have to be concerned about. And I know that we've added Jonathan Jones at corner. I know that we have Marshawn, we have Mikey, Noah, and Jonathan Jones. But you do have to think about for a second, if Marshawn were to miss time, what are we going to do? And I love Mikey Sammerstill to death, but just ask him to do what Marshawn does is going to be kind of difficult for him in being the number one corner. But that being said, when we are joined by our fantastic and famous Hollywood guest, Mr. Corey Sanchez. How are you doing, sir?
Before you gave me that bloviated introduction, Kyle, I can't complain, bro. I'm doing good. How about you, man? How's it living being a trillionaire and all the good stuff? And I know you got your Cybertruck and all these other things. So, I know you're doing good things, brother. But it's good to be on.
My wife would never allow me to get a Cybertruck. I'll tell you that right now. She complains about the look all the time, seeing him. I'm telling you right now, she'd be up in arms over that, Corey.
I heard.
Yeah,
Mine would too.
I mean,
She wouldn't let me get a Cybertron, let alone a Cybertruck. So
I absolutely love it, dude. But I had a question submitted by the Colonel. I want to get your opinion on this, brother. I really
Mhm.
appreciate you for taking some time out to join me on this day. But his question was, aside from edge rusher, what is our biggest defensive weakness yet to be addressed?
I still think that you have to do something at corner, right? You still have to do something at corner because, I've heard some folks say that corner is overrated, but no, it is they are agitators, right? And we see that we've got some of the best wide receivers in the NFC, right? In AJ Brown, you've got CD Lamb, and then you got Malik. Would you be my neighbors? You got to find a way to stop those guys. And it starts in your secondary. It's going to start with cornerback. So I think that is the second biggest issue outside of edge rusher, because if you get to the quarterback, the receiver ain't getting the ball. But if they do get it off to them and everything, um, you got to have corner, man. And it has to be. And then, is Will Harris the answer to your Jeremy Chin question? So it could be just the entire secondary, but I'll say cornerback for the sake of the argument.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's what I was
Mhm.
saying when you first got on here.
Yeah.
And there's guys in the draft, like there's a guy like Ezra Thomas from Florida State University who, when I watch his film, he reminds me a lot of Marshawn, just from like the body typing, the kind of thicker
Mhm.
corner, and he's majority a man kind of corner. But like one thing people will bring up is like that he pulls, that he maybe a little bit too handsy. But what I would say is, obviously, we let go of Benjamin St. Juste, and his hands at times were the big issue, or lack thereof, allowing people to run by him, right? But with Ezra Thomas, I said this on Deuce's show. There is a difference between grabbing to recover and to
Mhm.
not get beat, and there's a difference between that and also being in control, having hands on a guy, and just being able to control the route and obstruct the route, right? And that's
Right.
what I think
And
AZ
yeah,
Thomas does really well at.
and we saw that a lot with St. Juice last year. Was like, and I think he was a victim of not being coached properly. Not saying this administration, but
I
in
got
the
you.
previous year, like there was something there that was not clicking for him because he showed promise, right? So unfortunately, I think we do have teachers in the room now that are willing to teach these guys. Look at Mike Sammer still and his development. I think a lot of that is for his maturity, but you've got people in there that are willing to teach these guys and help them grow. So yeah, I see that. And then when I heard Benjamin St. Juice was going to LA, I thought it was Lower Alberta because I thought they had like thrown him across the border just and burned up his green card. But you know, we got to work on that. We got to work. I think he was in that tariff exchange, buddy. That's what happened. So,
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. But like you're absolutely right about Benjamin St. Juste, because that change of philosophy,
mhm.
philosophy defensively really did change with the regimes. And you can look at their draft picks, like for example Benjamin St. Juste, right? Looking at Emmanuel Forbes, not really known at being able to come up, make plays on the run game. And that's
Mhm.
obviously what Mikey Sanders still, what they've added here. That's something that he is very willing to do, and we saw that a lot this year. Even at Michigan, it really popped off to you, and also the ball skills. And you could say Emmanuel Forbes had those ball skills, but it begs the question, really, like how much was that due to his play and not just the situation that was in. But
Yeah.
obviously, getting rid of the Flamingo and the Canadian were two things that they wanted to be able to do, and they did a good job at doing that. And I think that they reloaded very well.
Kyle, did you just make a funny? I think in all my times of being on here, you have been the straight man, and you had. I'm proud of you. You have graduated, and I'm so proud of you because I just called him feed the children. That's what I called the flamingo all the time because that boy played like he looked. He was hungry, but it was more like frail hunger more than like he wanted his next meal. So yeah, but
Forgive
I'm
me.
proud of you, brother. That's
Forgive me
development.
for I'm not
No, no,
trying to
no,
pick
no,
on the
no,
young
no,
man.
no, no, no,
But
no, no, no.
dude, I beat myself up so bad in that draft class. I wanted Christian Gonzalez. I was like, that's going to be a legit lockdown corner at the next level. There were some people that argued with me about that, saying he wasn't a lockdown corner, and then seeing that we didn't get him, and I was like, dude,
Yeah.
what am I missing here? It wasn't me. But at this point, Corey, I think Rivera was doing that on purpose to get out of here. to get
Yeah.
shot off on a rocket. He wanted to get back to California and go golfing a lot. And obviously, credit to him. God bless him. I hope he does well out there. But the next question from the Colonel, Corey. This is
Hmm.
kind of a long one, so bear with me. The running back position was devalued the past several years, with the monster seasons of Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and others. Is there renewed emphasis on the position? Would we use a high draft pick on a running back, especially after re-signing our entire running back room?
It's kind of funny. That's a good question by the Colonel. What position wasn't devalued throughout the last few years? To be honest with you, I'm gonna answer a question with another question. Um, the defense was eroded. This is why Adam Peters had to make those trades, is to get to kind of speed up from all those poor
Right.
those draft choices. But I just don't see us going high with a running back. It just doesn't make sense, because it's what I always say, is the juice worth the squeeze, right? And your biggest squeeze needs to be on edge rusher, because you need to be designed to stop the Philadelphia Eagles. I know some people say, no, you don't focus on. They're the Super Bowl champions. They're the champions of the NFC East. They beat you 2 out of 3 times, embarrassed you the last time around. So you got to be built. And what is that built on? That's built on stopping the run on that side. And then if you want to build that run, I think you could have a scheme adjustment. I've talked with a couple of my buddies about this, and Brian Robinson is not built for that shotgun run all the time.
Right.
You got to get him with the his team. I think if you go under center a little bit more, maybe a little I formation, you're going to have opportunities for him to snarf up some yards and have a good um, have a good season. And in all intents and purposes, outside the injuries, he played well in some of those games. So I don't think it's devalued. I think over the years, the league realizes that there's a premium on running backs, and you can almost plug anybody in there. Saquon's a unicorn.
Yeah.
Saquon is a unicorn. Derrick Henry is a unicorn. Everybody else, you can put them in there and plug and play. And I'd rather have 2 to 3 average running backs than a real elite running back, because if that guy gets hurt, especially now 17 game season, maybe an 18-game season, the tread's going to wear out quicker. So, I mean, I could see them doing maybe a day 2 or day 3 pick, but not a late day 2 pick. So maybe the third round as the starter for that, but it's probably going to be a day 3 pick. But no, I don't see an early pick with running back unless
I
it's somebody they really like.
Yeah, I totally agree with you and everything you said. The one thing I've been
Mhm.
saying is, as much as we like the fan base likes to poo-poo on Brian Robinson, and I get it, Brian
Mhm.
hasn't probably produced at the level that he should have. But if he were to go to Pittsburgh, I mean, that's a shoe-in fit for what we're kind of talking about,
Right.
right? And they would be welcoming. Obviously, after they left off with Najee Harris, Brian Robinson just offers you just a little bit more in the passing game. Look, a lot of respect to Najee being able to take the beating that he did all those years, but I feel like Brian would fit that very, very well. But
Mhm.
obviously, he's here with us. We're happy to have him. And I agree with you. I don't think the high pick is worth the squeeze, worth the juice of the squeeze, because there's there's obviously there's a lot of running backs in this class, and
Mhm.
there are. And I would say that there's probably a good point that people are making when they make the point of saying, well, they only have 4 running backs, right? But all of them are going to be free agents next year, and so you don't have anybody there. But I'd be willing to argue, hey, you could go down the route of going again with free agency, right? Or you could go down the route of getting a running back later in the draft, like you talked about, because with Anthony Lynn and company, I think that they're and obviously Cliff Kingsbury, they'd be able to identify the traits that they like,
Yeah.
and those traits are going to be evident in this draft. And I think that probably getting it in later rounds is the best bet that you can for your football team, because to your point, I don't think by adding a running back high is the difference between us winning against Philly and not, right?
Right.
The
Yeah.
biggest thing for me is, like, I would even say the Kansas City, because like you can say, yes, of course the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but that's not really giving them due diligence and justice really in what they built in Philly, and where really they didn't have any weaknesses last year. And what they did against Kansas City is they just strangled them to death.
Yep.
And they did that by rushing 4, sitting their secondary linebackers back, and basically saying, hit your check downs or we're going to get after you. And you can't run the football against us in that rushing the 4. So I'd be willing to say would running back really be able to get you over the top? It's much more about
No.
in the trenches, being able to get more turnovers for your secondary, your defense, getting more sacks, applying more pressure. But obviously, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know Adam Peters is what he's going to do. But I'd be willing to say that I don't think that the high value running back pick at 29 is going to be the difference in us of being able to contend against Philly. Because my point being is, if you can beat Philly, you could beat 95% of this league. And so that is the team that you should be trying to measure. It's not because they're in a division, just because they're Super Bowl champs. It's because the way they've built their team is the best.
Yeah. I mean, the only people that know what Adam Peters is thinking of, those folks that are Eagles fans that have Excel sheets and everything that tell us how valuable our roster is. So, I mean, those are only people who know what Adam Peters is doing, Kyle. So we yield to them.
Yes, we absolutely do. They love to come back and forth with us, of course, because I do respect him for taking the time out for our team and labeling and putting numbers next to each guy. It's just at some breath you got to be able to say, is it unbiased the way that you're doing these things? Because do you truly know the ins and the outs of the team and what they're capable of? But that's neither here nor there.
I mean, it's a heck of a resume, man. It's a heck of a resume. If I put my resume in Chat GPT, I'd probably have a heck of a resume too.
All right, now this next question is from Deluxe. If best player on the board at 29 is a guard, do you pull the trigger? Tunsil, a rookie, Badass, Cosme, and Coleman, with the depth of having Allegretti, Wiley, Dieter, Herbig, and Searle. Put the caveat in there that it could be a tackle that's drafted at 29, and you could move him in at guard. We do have to put that caveat in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. Oh man, I just don't think that the value. I don't think that value would for me, if the guy who I want an edge rusher, because that's what we're struggling with right now, and we haven't really made any big moves to get that. And I mean, you have made some signings on that offensive line that could prove to be positive for you later on, especially with, as Jay Green would say, just a guard, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't pull the trigger. I trade out of that pick and try to recoup what you lost through some of those trades with Tunsil and oh boy, from the Saints, I can't even think of his name. Lattimore. I couldn't even think of Lattimore's name real quick. But yeah, that's what I do. If it's a guard, then I don't know, man. I pass on it unless my edge rusher was there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like in terms of specifically guard, I would say probably chill out on that. I would say if it's a worthy enough to play tackle and be able to slide Coleman in at guard, that's when you're really cooking with gas. Because like we just talked about, being able to beat Philly, what you have to be able to do is run the football against their front four and consistently and in a concrete way. And so if you're able to bolster your offensive line to the point where Brian Robinson's vision is not necessarily needed because you're opening up holes the size of an 18-wheeler, then you're in a very good position, right? And that's actually a really good way to be able to beat Philly, because if you're able to score points and put them up in a really quick manner, then you're doing well. And I'd also be willing to argue that this edge class is so deep. Like they met with Ashton Giletti from Louisville. Very strong dude, is a great bull rush, is able to even have some pass rush moves and moving the hands, getting away. Thicker guy, so he's able to set the edge. And this draft class has a lot of guys like that, like Jared Ivey, for example, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scorton. There's a lot of guys with that sort of body type and play style. But I'd also be willing to say that there's so many, like a Braden Swinson, Antoine Powell-Ryland, David Walker, all there and ready. And Kyle Kennard is another one you could bring up. And so there's so many edge rushers that you'd be willing to say, is that tackle/guard going to be able to be there at 61 or possibly later? Most likely not. So is that probably the best bang for your buck, being able to compete against Philly? I'd argue it would be. So I'd say I would pull the trigger if it does match in terms of production. But like, I'm just like you. I want an edge rusher, but I know from doing the research, I know that there's a lot of guys that could easily fit in here, man.
Yeah.
Now, the next question from Deluxe. Oh, my bad. This one's from Tim Towner. Getting close to draft day finds most us dreaming of players we'd love to be Commanders. Well, let's flip that script, Corey. Name top 3 players you don't want us to draft.
Jeez. Oh, Lord. Can I just go by position? And I don't want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do
Yeah.
that.
They're good. Lord, Tim always got you thinking, man.
Well, it's because I
Um,
ask them questions for like twice a week, and so they have to get deep in the barrel for it, you know?
I know I'm in the Discord. I was like, whew. Um, well, obviously, I wouldn't want to draft. And this is just at 29, correct? Right?
Yeah.
Is that what we're? Yeah.
Well, or just overall.
Overall, I don't really think. I, well, obviously, you don't need a tackle, right? Right, lefty. I don't think you need a tackle on the offense line. I think you're pretty much set there for all intents and purposes. Um, I wouldn't make a. I wouldn't even make a tug at tight end either, right? Because tight end, I mean, I want to see what Senate has. I know Ertz is coming off that unicorn season, and there's a reason why John Bates is back here as well. So I think they're comfortable with that tight end room. Um, I think that's about it, man. I think it'd be two, three, but I think anywhere else you can because I feel like you need to upgrade with wide receiver just because I think you should always be drafting wide receivers because you're
I
trying to
got you.
find the next best thing. And I think everywhere else you can add. Yeah, I think you might need to find another linebacker just because of Bobby's age, and we don't know what Jordan McGee is because of his health and kind of missing part of last year.
My man, you answered it really well. I know you don't dive deep like I do, so I'll say
No,
I'll take the weight of this one, and I'll say there's
yes,
three
please.
guys. Two of them are corners. The first one being, and I want to caveat my answer with saying this. I'm not saying that they're bad players. What I'm saying is based on where their projection is, I am not comfortable with having them on the team at that position, at that projection. The one I'll say is Maxwell Harrison from Kentucky. Do not want that guy being drafted here, of course. Obviously, they could help him, and Jason Simmons could really easily help coach him up being able to play against the pass. But saw a lot of things on film with Red Zone Lab that I was like, got turned away from him. He's a combine hero, and I'm much more so about what the film provides. And so with Maxwell Harrison, I am so far away from that one. The other one I'll say is Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. What's up, Paul? And I'll just say, based on his projection of where he's at, I think that I would need more of a blocking type of guy. And then the other one is Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. Is it? Yeah, Michigan. Look, a lot of respect to Mikey Sanders still. I know that defense is fantastic at what they provide. But if I'm going to be drafting a corner in the first round, you got to be able to come up and make a play on the running back. And I saw him get trucked by the USC running back. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, all right, I'm out. Because if you're going to be a first-round guy, you got to be able to come up and make a tackle. I don't need Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes out there just getting run over by people. You know what I mean? So I need you to be a force in the first round, and that's what I'm expecting. And so with those three guys, I would say I'm out on. What's up, Paul? Thanks for joining us, man. Do you want to answer this one?
I don't even know what the question is, but I literally haven't watched any college prospects or anything, so probably
Just
not.
are there three players in the draft that you don't want Washington to draft? Think you come up with one?
Mm, I'm not a big what's the Tennessee edge, James Pierce.
Why not?
I just think that while I do think that he can be like a developed pass rusher, like you said, in the first round at 29, I feel like I need a guy that's going to be a little bit more stout against the run, seeing how that was our biggest downfall on defense last year. I need a guy that's going to be a little bit more stout on the run. And while I do like his quickness and his athleticism against on the edge and pass rushing situations, I just feel like he right now is kind of like Dante Fowler, like a better version of Dante Fowler, but he could turn into a good like edge setting end at some point. I just feel like we need that production right here and right now if you're going to take a guy at 29. So it's not where I don't think he's going to be good or can't be great or even would add to our team. It's just at 29, it's like, man.
Yeah, the one thing that scared me about James Pierce was his inability to come down with sacks and tackles and crucial situations where we've dealt with it before, Montez Sweat and Chase Young. And we love to see that 1 year of production, but like you said, need to be able to have that consistent application of being able to get after the quarterback and bring him down. That's the difference in a lot of football games. Corey, now this next question from Tim Towner, buy or sell? There is no clear-cut number one pick in the draft, and because of this, There will be no trades in the top 4 picks. Do you buy or sell that?
No trades in the top 4 picks. I'm selling that. I just feel like the nefarious behavior of Cleveland, and I feel like they'll find a way to screw themselves. And then, I mean, I feel like the Giants might have a quota on their quarterbacks, so they might, they may try to trade out as well. I'm not even really sold on Tennessee too, because this could be make or break for Brian Callahan. So I don't know, unless they've got a surefire player at one, whether it's Shador or Cam. I'm like, do they really go? And roll the dice there? So I don't know, man. I'll sell that.
All right, I'm with you there. But I will say that I would just interview Justin, who's a big Tennessee Titans guy, works for the Draft Network, and he was talking about how they sent everybody to go to the Cam Ward pro day,
Yeah.
and the general manager, head coach, and Brian Callahan bringing like the 2 quarterbacks you have in the roster, 2 backup journeyman older guys, so the perfect for like a backup veteran that has a history with Brian Callahan at Cincinnati. So it'd be that kind of mentor kind of. I'll tell you right now, as much as Tim is saying there is no clear-cut number 1, I think the clear-cut number 1 is without a doubt Cam Ward.
Yeah.
What he showed this year was absolutely incredible. But it does beg the question. I don't think it's going to be about quarterback, Tim, in the top 4. I do think if Travis Hunter is sniffing around there, I do think that somebody would be willing to come up and get him, especially if they want to add that to the cornerback room, that possible superstar. And we can't forget about Abdul Carter coming in, who's going to be a really good edge rusher in this league. But like you said, with the quarterbacks, I don't think it's – I would sell that. I agree with Corey. What about you, Hall?
I'm going to buy that. I don't think there is going to be any trades in the top 4.
Oh, no, I meant buy. Sorry. Yeah, buy. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that because, like you said, I do think that it's getting pretty clear cut that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick, unless some team like the Giants or the Browns decides to legitly give up the entire farm to jump up to 1, which I don't see that happening. Maybe in last year's draft, if there was this kind of like buzz around this many quarterbacks and how good they're supposed to be, I could see a couple trades going down, a couple teams coming up, going down, whatever it may be. But this class has been described as lackluster, if you want to call it that. So I think it is clear cut that Cam Ward is becoming the number 1 pick and will be the number 1 pick. And I don't see a team jumping up to get Shador Sanders at a quarterback position. And yeah, I just see Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter just falling into place to whatever teams draft them. And like you said, that 4 spot, maybe, but I don't see a team, like I said, I don't see a team coming up to draft Shador where they can probably most likely he'll just slide to them at some point. So, yeah, I'm going to buy that. It's going to be no trades in the top 4 picks. Maybe at some point, but once we get down to like closer to like 10, I could see maybe some trades starting to go down. But, yeah, the top 4 I think is going to be solidified.
I'll throw this monkey wrench in there for y'all. If Aaron Rodgers just decides to kind of walk away from the Pittsburgh situation, what do the Steelers do?
Yeah, that's a great one.
I mean, they do have a really, 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 really stocked up pile of draft picks. Gavin's been talking about this forever. Like, oh, the draft's in Pittsburgh next year, and the Roonies are going to draft their franchise quarterback in Pittsburgh. They got all these picks. They got all these other comp picks coming in 2026. So I could see that, but also I feel like I feel like a lot of people have been talking about how they like Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart might possibly can be able to slide them in the first round. Apparently, they really like Jalen Milroe for whatever reason. They can get him in a later round. So I do think that I think there is a little bit of merit to them kind of gearing up for maybe next year's class where it's a little bit stronger. Maybe they can use a lot of them picks to kind of move up in the draft and get a guy. But yeah, that's a good scenario. But I still think that Shador might be there at 21 for all we know. He might slide to 21. Jackson Dart might be there at 21, so they might have a pick at quarterback right then and there.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about it. Look, but we all have to remember they did come out and say that they were very confident with Mason Rudolph as the starter, right?
Mm-hmm.
We got to be able to take their word for it, right? Even though they're trying to bring in Aaron Rodgers, of course. But yeah, I'm with you guys. This is going to be a fun draft, especially with I know we're going to be later in the 29. such a fresh breath of air. It's crazy because we picked 2, and then we're now at 29. It's wow, what a crazy a year, right? To Deluxe, to your question, have you looked at running back Marcus Yarns from Delaware? I have not. I'll try to be able to scrounge up some film on him to be able to watch him. I know that you're not the first person to bring him up. I think Ryan Fowler, when he interviewed us, brought him up as somebody else that because such a deep class at running back. Music to my ears, and obviously I've done some work at University of Delaware recently. I was actually up there today, so I would love to be able to watch him and see how he's doing because obviously Delaware, as much as they're not known for football, they do pump out some pro prospects. Now the last question we have, if I can open my phone, which is not going to happen. Hall, there's always a top prospect that falls. Who could it be this year? Abdul Carter?
No, it's not gonna be Abdul Carter. I think it might be Shador Sanders. A lot of people have him as like a top 10, 15 prospect, top 20 prospect, whatever you want to call it, in this class. And if he doesn't get drafted by the Giants at 3 or whatever, 4, whatever pick they are, maybe the Raiders, if he gets past the Raiders, that's when you can really see the fall start to happen. Unless someone decides like to trade back up into the first round or trade up to get him, which again, I don't really see that happening. Maybe Dallas takes him for whatever reason. Maybe they try to entice Dion to come over next year. Maybe he slides to Dallas. And we just talked about Pittsburgh at 21.
He just signed a contract extension.
Yeah, but I mean, you know how many times coaches sign a contract extension and then 2 months later they go like leave for another school? Like it's all about the buyout money. They get the buyout money. They're like, whatever. But
we'll see.
Trust me, Jerry will pay that buyout money for Dion. But but I mean that's like the least likely scenario to happen. But yeah, I don't even remember what the question is. I got so sidetracked.
Who's gonna fall? You said Shador.
Oh, fall. Yeah, Shador Sanders. Yeah, I just think that if he doesn't get taken by the Raiders at pick whatever pick they have, like 7 or 8, I think that his next stop might be Pittsburgh, and that's like another quarterback needy team. Maybe he goes to Pittsburgh, but if he gets to 21, then who knows how far he'll slide at that point.
Yeah, we got to hurry up and end this show because Corey's over there sweating like Mike Tomlin at the owners' meetings. Look, what prospect? I don't mean any disrespect because, like, obviously in the first half of the first round, I'm not really paying attention to those guys of the consensus top guys that could possibly fall deluxe. But to give respect to the question, I think the easy one at this point is being able to say somebody like Luther Burden because of the kind of off-the-field stuff. I know that Todd McShay, I have a lot of respect for Todd McShay, saying that he quit on them in a couple games. I know that's not going to sit well with a lot of teams wanting to give a bunch of money to a guy and without playing it down for him. And so that could possibly be somebody that falls, and we're all wondering, why didn't you pick him there at 29? He was there. Well, there might be a reason for that, right? So if I'm going to say that, I think Luther Burden is probably a good one to pick there. What do you think, Corey? Do you have anybody?
Nah, Hall took mine. I was gonna say Shadizor because I mean I could see that, and just the humbling fall of a Sanders is just kind of that's like meat left on the bone for me. So I love Dion. Don't get me wrong. You know, I love him. You know, I'm probably gonna have 3 toes down in the future because of diabetes. So I'm gonna be right there with him. So, you know.
Okay.
I'll say another guy is maybe Ted McMillan, just because there's been a lot of talk about his off the field stuff, like you were talking about. There's that one recent video talking about he doesn't like to watch film.
That was from like 2021.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah. But you know how teams are. They go all the way back to like middle school and be like, oh, you did this in middle school.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so I mean, I saw a couple drafts as of late that had him dropping down to like the 20s in the first round. So yeah, I mean that's another name to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that, and it's funny because I did see that one. But the one pet peeve I have is if I'm on the phone with somebody and they're eating. If somebody was eating on a Zoom call with us, I know it was like impromptu, but I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way. Like I was like, dude, I'll just call you back another time. I know this is a big interview for us. Would love to be able to talk with you, but you got to finish your meal, man. I don't want to hear you chewing. You know what I mean? I can't stand. I'm thinking that we're gonna like, dude, just get it out. Just get it out, all right? Just get it out. This question for you guys before we wrap up. Corey, is there a position or player? Because Anthony Armstrong brought up a good point. that we got to the NFC Championship game. We're in the win now. As much as Adam Peters and company will not admit that, he made a good point saying that he thinks that trading up is not out of the realm because you need that impact player right now production, and he wouldn't rule that out even though we only have 5 picks. What position or player do you have in mind that you'd be willing to trade up for?
Oh Lord, I mean, we get the boy from Penn State, Carter. I mean, but I don't know if we got the ammo to get up that far up in the draft. We probably gonna. I mean, that's who I would go with is Abdul Carter to kind of solidify that edge for us because you want an instant impact player, kind of like what we got at quarterback last year. So, I mean, if you got the ammo, go ahead and do it. But if not, I mean, he's going to have to wait and see. But he's getting kind of like Les Snead with these draft picks now. He's like just like bump these picks if you need them.
You're absolutely right. A couple guys come to mind, like Tyler Warren, for example. I know we have a deep tight end room, but Tyler Warren is an all-around prospect to the point where they even used him in wildcat formations, taking the ball out of the backfield.
Local kid too,
stretching the field. It's incredible.
Fan
Catch
of
radius
Rigo.
is there. And he's a monster blocker, dude. Being able there was one clip where he was blocking a linebacker into the end zone, into the back of the pylon, and still blocking and punching with him. And so that's a guy that I would say is warrant of that. The other one I would say is Mike Green, based on the off-the-field issues and everything like that. I know Howie Roseman talked to NFL Network today and said that he wouldn't if there's a guy who has issues with like domestic violence or that kind of stuff, he wouldn't draft him at all. Even though it was 10 years ago, he's learned from it. He still wouldn't draft him, which brings the big question into mind about other things that went on, but that's neither here nor there. I would say Mike Green, I think, is somebody that has that kind of overall trait and play style that you would kind of get at a Minka. And I would imagine with Joe Witt and Dan Quinn that they'd be able to get the most out of Mike Green, and he'd be an immediate impact player, maybe a little bit undersized, but he is a freak of nature in what he's able to do against the run and the pass with some quality reps, and he showed you that at the Senior Bowl. And there's a reason why he's considered a top 15 pick, and I definitely do think he's going to be there. But just for the sake of the question, I would say Mike Green and Tyler Warren. What do you think, Hall?
No, those are good ones. Yeah, I would if Tyler Warren somehow dropped down to like the mid-teens, late teens, I would have no problem with them jumping up from 29 to whatever picked and giving up whatever to get him because that's like an instant impact player.
Yeah.
You can put him all over the field, tight end, wildcat, receiver. He's a great receiving tight end, like you said, great blocking tight end, just all around great tight end. That would be crazy move for the offense. I would say with the caveat of if there's like a run on defensive ends toward like the late teens into the early 20s and you really, really like Donovan Izoroku, then I would say if you want to trade up from 29 to get a guy like that, just because you think that he has the traits that's going to fit into your defense, you can make him into your next defensive end for the next 10 plus years for your defense, then I have no problem with them jumping up to get a guy like that. Had 16 and a half sacks at Boston College. He's a guy that can set the edge on the run. Like I said, good pass rusher, obviously 16 and a half sacks. So, if there's a run on defensive ends and they feel that they really want to get a guy like Donovan, then I wouldn't mind them trading up for 29, a couple spots to get a guy like that.
I see that. Donovan Iziriku will most likely be gone in the top 25. Like if he
I know.
If he does make it to 25, like he's definitely going to be there at 29. But like I agree with you.
I don't know because the Lions need an edge too to go opposite Aiden Hutchinson, and they're right above us, Falcons.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of get above teams like that. That's why I was saying if you think the Lions are a team targeting him, then you want to jump them. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, and
I will ask this though before we jump off because it just kind of jumped in my head too. So with the recent stuff with like Trey Hendrickson and everyone thought the deal was getting done because the cap jumped up. They got the deals done with T. Higgins and Jamar, got a little bit more cap room. But now the owner's daughter is like talking some like crazy, ridiculous stuff. Trey Hendrickson went on Pat McAfee talking about he's been telling him he wants to re-sign for 3 years, and basically the price of the brick then went up. So how would y'all feel about? Obviously, I'm not giving up 29 for Trey Hendrickson, but if they gave up 61 and whatever and paid Trey Hendrickson, how would y'all feel about that?
Corey?
Well, let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. Let's roll.
Yeah, if it's 61, like you can't get much better than getting Trey Hendrickson. You're getting the immediate right now production. Obviously, there are some injury concerns and everything like that, but we have a quality coaching medical staff now that'd be able to get him ready to play, and obviously he'd be highly motivated to do so. I think that's an easy one to say absolutely, and you'd still be able to get an impact guy at 29, possibly trade back if needed to kind of get some more of those mid-round picks, which are going to be crucial for you. I'd be all for it, to be honest. And as much as I don't like the idea of paying guys big money that haven't played it down for you, the NFC Championship changed things, and we need those extra eyes. We need that extra production, that the game-changing type of players. And of course, it's hard to do that in the draft year one. And so I think that's a home run if you're able to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I know that you're down for it because you've been talking about Trey Hendrickson for a while.
Yeah, but again, like you said, it's mainly because the edges outside of like Mike Green might be there at 29, but we'll see. There might be a right on the edges. You never know. But a lot of the guys that I kind of wanted at 29, I think are going to be already gone in the top 25, top 27-ish picks. So it's like the guys that that you think can come in and make an instant impact are going to be gone. The next best thing is a guy that's a proven vet that you know what you're going to get out of him. Like, obviously, injury caveats in there or whatever, but you know what you're going to get out of him for the past 2 years. He's going to give you at least 15 plus sacks. So, and that can be our kind of game changer, kind of closer on the defensive side of the ball late in games. We got Jaden on offense. Now we got a guy on defense that can kind of close the game out for us as well. So that's my only reasoning behind that, because I am with you as far as like, he's a little bit up there in age, and I don't know if I want to like give him the big contract without playing it down for us. But like you said, with the way that the team performed last year, with the window that's opened up, like pretty much kicked wide open right now, if you're going to load up your team with 30 plus players, like high money players, I might as well be like top 3 at the position type players. So I have no problem with that.
I'm with it. All right, guys, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you've made it this far, you're a freaking champion. Corey, thank you for being a champion and coming on and join me, help me bridge the gap. Before you get out of here, you got anything rolling up with your show, sir?
I'm a gap bridger all the time, so I appreciate it.
To bridge this damn gap, I got my tooth from this chip.
Oh no! Oh gosh, hey, I mean, Michael Strahan made it work, bro. You can make it too. So, yeah, I got tomorrow night. Gonna have a couple of guys on from Fox Sports 1310 in Virginia Beach. Going to talk about the off-season moves and everything. And, because I've been on basketball duty the last couple of weeks, that I'm finally getting back into the fray of stuff. So, we'll be live about 7:00 Eastern time, talking about it, talking about the draft and all that good stuff and these off-season moves that we've made so far. But, as always, I'm honored and humble that you, Mr. Kyle, allowed me to grace you with grace me with your presence, and it's always an honor to be on such in such an esteemed personality's presence. So
stop that crap. All right, everybody, that's good.
I'll stop it when you stop it.
All right, sorry, Hollywood. All right, everybody, we'll see you guys again on Sunday. Hope you have a great, safe week. Of course, I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
I'm humbled.
And we'll see you all on Sunday. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.